guest speaker today is Kristen. She is amazing. She's going to talk to us about all things time management, distractions. So Kristen, if you want to introduce yourself to the group and tell us just a little bit about yourself and how you got here.
Yeah, so I've been in the industry with my husband for like 20 years, probably. We started out doing appliance installation with Lowe's and Home Depot in the Atlanta market and kind of grew and have done a whole lot of things in the last 20 years. Currently, we have Paradise Home Services, which is here in the Panhandle of Florida. We run from Pensacola to Panama City. We do plumbing and HVAC for residential. And then I'm not in our business in a full-time capacity. I'm in a part-time capacity as our CFO. And I provide other virtual CFO services to other companies in the industry. I'm in Service Nation Alliance, do some coaching with them, just kind of get around to help my husband and I both try to get around to help as many business owners as we can, because we've struggled with pretty much every struggle that you can have in home services. And we want to help people kind of shorten their learning curve and their struggle so they can be successful. So today, and we wrote a book called When Your Business Partner is Your Spouse, How to Have a Successful Business and a Happy Marriage. Because sometimes, like in our industry, there's a lot of married business couples and the struggle is real sometimes. So anyway, so today what we're going to talk about, which I'm assuming I can share my screen, right? What we're going to talk about today is time management. Time management is a thing I think that we probably all struggle with in some way, shape, or form. Hopefully my screen will share here in a second.
You want it to be off.
Did it work for you? Can you share it? There you go.
Let's make sure we're playing though. I don't think I'm sharing the right one. Let me try that again. Hang tight with my technology, y'all. Hang on, I'm in presentation mode and I'm trying to get out of it so I can see the right screen here. I'm not sharing anything at the moment currently, right?
That's correct, Kristen.
Let's try this again. Well, you guys, it's doubling my screen. Okay, we're going to do this without presentation because there really isn't anything important on there anyway. So we're just going to talk about time management. How about that? Okay, so when we talk about time management, the first thing that comes to mind from time management is the number 1440. Does anybody know what the number 1440 represents? Anybody have any guesses? 1,440.
The number of minutes in a day?
It is the number of minutes in a day. Good job. 1440 is the number of minutes in a day. The thing about that is that no matter who we are, no matter where we are, no matter what we do, we all have that same boundary, that same time constraint of 1,440 minutes in a day. So our goal is to try to get the most out of that time, to be the most productive and the most efficient that we can out of that time throughout the day. And the trick with time, as opposed to money, is that when money is gone, we can just like regenerate it, re-earn it, get some more somewhere else. But when time is gone, once it's gone, it's done. And so it's a non-renewable resource. It's something that we're not ever going to get back. So what's crazy is that we spend more time managing money than we do time. And we let time get away from us. So today we're going to focus in a lot on how do we rein that in? How do we get control? How do we own our 1440 every day? The first thing that we're going to talk about is a series of time principles. One of the time principles to consider is that in order to say yes to something, you have to say no to something else, whether you realize it or not. So when we, for example, let's say we hit the snooze button 2 or 3 times this morning. So we're saying yes to getting a few extra minutes of sleep in. That means that we're saying no to something else. It could be getting up and going to the gym. It could be getting up and reading a devotional. It could be having breakfast with your kids. It could be a handful of different things. But the idea is that we're saying yes to the one thing, and then we're saying no to something else. So when we say yes to something, what is it that we're having to say no to? Those examples were kind of like on the negative side. That can be a positive side too. So if we're saying yes to something, our no could actually be like a good thing for us. It doesn't have to be it's not always an opportunity cost. Another time principle that sometimes is arguable would be that multitasking is not actually a thing, that it is not possible to effectively multitask. We can physically do more than one thing at a time. However, those things individually are not getting 100% of our time, attention, and focus. And so multitasking actually ends up taking more time than if you were to just focus on one thing at a time and be able to do it more accurately than trying to do multiple things at one time. One example that I think about this is if I am driving in a car and I don't know where I'm going and I have the GPS on and she starts to talk to me because I'm about to have to find a road or find a turn or do something, I end up turning my radio down so that I can pay closer attention to what she's telling me to do. And that is just that example of really you can only focus on one thing at a time. So we want to kind of turn down all of the background things that are going on when we're trying to focus so that we can be more efficient, because time management or multitasking isn't actually very efficient. And then the last thing, which we kind of touched on already from the time principle standpoint, is just that we do spend more time managing our money than we do our time. So the whole rest of our time together today, we're just going to talk about what are ways that we can get control of it, rein it in, manage time, and use time more effectively and efficiently. So the first thing to do typically when you're analyzing any of this is to kind of take inventory of where your time is going currently. So has anybody ever in here done a food diary? Have you guys ever done a food diary? You write down everything that you eat and then how much of it you ate. And then you kind of look at your calories and how much sugar and how much salt. Like now there's like apps where you just scan the barcode of whatever it is that you ate and it fills it all in for you, which is super cool. If you've never done a food diary, it's actually quite eye-opening. But when we're looking at time management, we can do the same thing with our time. We can do a time diary. So after this call, you guys are going to get a recap. One of the things that you're going to get in the recap is a fillable worksheet that you can use to do your own time diary. The reason that we do a time diary is because we are just taking some time to observe what is going on in our lives on a day-to-day basis. We're writing down pretty much everything that happens from the time that you wake up until the time that you go to sleep. We do our time diaries, not just when we're working, but in the times that we're not working too. And we write down everything. And so the thing with a time diary is that the exercise in itself consumes time. So it sounds a little counterproductive, but we're only going to do it for 5 consecutive business days. It does not have to be Monday through Friday. It could be Wednesday to Tuesday or Friday to Thursday or whatever. But you're gonna do one for each day of the week that you're working, because I don't know about you guys, but I am way more efficient and proficient Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday than I am Thursday, Friday. Because by Thursday, Friday, I'm like sliding into the weekend. I'm thinking about what we're doing on the weekend, and I'm just not as productive. So the reason that we do 5 consecutive business days is just so that we can make sure that we capture what we're doing on each different day of the week. Now, we want to write everything down on our time diary that happens. So the time that you get up, what your morning routine looks like and how long it lasts, right down to the minute. When you get into the shop or when you get into the office, what are the things that are consuming your time? And a lot of times what ends up happening when we fill these out is we see that our day is broken down into like 5 to 15 minute chunks of things, because there's just constantly disruptions or distractions. So we might sit down to draft an email and somebody comes to the door, or the phone rings, or you get a text message, or you get another email, or whatever. We stop doing what we're doing, drafting that email, and we focus in now on whatever's standing in front of us. We may or may not ever get back to finish drafting that email. The point with a time diary is not that we're criticizing anything at this point. All we're doing right now is just gathering data. And then we can look at the data that we've gathered to see what it is that is consuming our time. I will tell you, when I first did one, I noticed that I wasn't doing anything for longer than about 15 minutes at a time. So how could I possibly be productive if I couldn't focus for more than that length of time, just because there was constantly something going on? I also learned that I was doing certain things for a couple minutes at a time, but I was doing them multiple times throughout the day. And when I added it all up at the end, it added up into way more time than I thought it was going to. Social media was a huge culprit of that. I jump on social media for 5 minutes here and 10 minutes here and 5 minutes there. And at the end of the day, I've been on it for 2 hours. I would not have ever known that I would have been on social media for that long until you start adding it all up. So the whole, we're just using it to kind of gather all of this data. And awareness is key, right? Like when we start measuring something, even subconsciously, we start managing it at the same time. So the time diary, it's a fillable form. You're going to do one for every day. You're going to get a copy of one in the recap email so that you'll be able to use it yourself and just start looking at where your time is going. When you do record your items on your time diary, then what you're going to do after you've got it all your data collected is we're going to look for what I call time bandits. Time bandits are anything that happens throughout the day that makes you change focus by not your own accord. So for example, a time bandit could be a phone call that comes in. It could be somebody coming to your door, sitting down at your desk, or asking a question, something like that. It could be the fires that we put out every single day that need to be dealt with while we're working. Time bandits could also be unproductive meetings, time that we're spending in meetings. If there's no agenda, then there needs to be an agenda in every meeting that you are in or part of or running. Emails are examples of time bandits. Netflix and one more episode could be a time bandit. Even our kids can be a time bandit. Social media. The whole point with the idea of time bandits, though, is not that it's a bad thing. Obviously, our children are not a bad thing. The point of it, though, is we want to recognize what it is that's changing our focus and whether or not it's something that we can kind of corral in or rein in a little bit, or we can be a little bit more deliberate about. And these things are all going to show up when you do your time diary. Okay, so now we're going to move into more like practical, how do we actually control our time better? So the first thing that we're going to talk about are our calendars. So just by a show of hands, does anybody use a paper calendar, like a paper planner, paper desk calendar, anything like that? Okay, cool. Awesome. Who uses a digital calendar like Gmail or Outlook or whatever? Okay, awesome. Okay. Whatever calendar you use is great. And if it works for you, that's fantastic. I personally am team digital. Beck said she uses them all. That's hilarious. I'm team digital. So the reason I'm team digital is because we have these all the time, everywhere we go, no matter what. We could be driving, we could be at the grocery store, we could be in the bathroom, we could be at our desk, we could literally be anywhere, and we have our phones with us at all times. And when our phone is with us and we're digital calendar, that means that we can put something on our phone, on our calendar, and it will show up on our laptop and vice versa. So that personally works for me. If you are a paper planner kind of person and it works for you, fantastic. If you feel like it's not working for you, I recommend trying the digital because it's with you a little bit more often. Now, team digital for life, that's awesome. So what I will say is I don't recommend that you do both necessarily because a lot of times things can get missed in the cross between the two, and or you'll accidentally overbook yourself. So I would try to stick to one versus the other. I've seen people who they'll have like a paper calendar that is all of their kids' functions, sports practices and games and all that kind of stuff. And then they'll run their work calendar in Outlook or Gmail or whatever. And it's just creating a little bit more work on itself to try to have to cross over. So from the calendar standpoint, in order to maximize your calendar, whether you are paper or digital, there's a couple things that you're going to want to do. One is that you want to schedule everything on your calendar. Schedule everything, not just doctor's appointments and hair appointments and practice or whatever. You're going to schedule every single thing. You're going to schedule meetings at work. You're going to schedule time to work on your task lists. You're going to schedule email time. If you have to drive to a meeting, schedule the drive time. You're going to schedule everything. Yes. Sheena even putting in like scheduling brain breaks. So when I'm using my calendar, I will leave 25 to 35% of my day unscheduled. And the reason I do that is because things always come up. A meeting runs over, somebody is late, things come up throughout the day that we have to be able to try to work in. And if we pack ourselves so tight that there's no wiggle room, then it just leads to overwhelm. So yes, definitely keep like maybe 25% of your day unscheduled. That doesn't mean you're not doing anything. It just means that you're giving yourself kind of some wiggle room for things that change throughout the day. Where is my mouse here? Okay, what else are we doing with our calendar? Okay, time blocking is a huge thing. So organize your tasks in a way that you can time block. So let's say you have to make several outgoing phone calls today, schedule 30 minutes or an hour, however long you think it's going to take, and do all of your outgoing phone calls at this like back to back. Time blocking, if you're working on accounting functions, work on just accounting functions for however long you need to, and then shift gears to something else. When we jump back and forth from one thing to another, it just takes a while for our brains to kind of like change gears. So try to time block as much as you can.
Hey, Kristen, I got
Yes.
a question.
Yes.
How do you suggest prioritizing your day as far as, something is more important in the morning, or should you wait to the afternoon? What are your suggestions on that?
So the way that I do it is I personally know that there's parts of the day where my brain fires better than other parts. So like some people are morning people and some people are later in the day people. I personally operate the best between like 8:30 a.m. after my kids get out the door, because I currently work from home, until about 12:30 is like the strongest part of the day. So I will schedule the hard things then. The hard conversations that I might have to have, or the hard work, like if I'm trying to solve a problem or I'm trying to brainstorm something or whatever, I will schedule that during the strongest part of my day when at all possible, because if I'm tired, then it's easier to procrastinate on something that needs to get done. The other thing that I will say is that I'm not a proponent of scheduling things the same time every single day. So like, for example, let's say every day we know that we need to work on our task list. I'm not necessarily one that would suggest saying every day at 10 o'clock, make an appointment on your calendar to work on your task list, because stuff comes up and every day at 10 o'clock, you are not going to be available to work on your task list. So look through your calendar and say, okay, I'm looking at my week and I know I need to get this and this and this done. So as I see my week layout, I'm going to kind of put things in where I know that I have free time and the ability to work on it. Standing appointments on your calendar are kind of like sticky notes. Sticky notes work really good when you first put them on your monitor. And then after about a week, you don't even see them anymore. You look right past them. And so standing appointments from that standpoint, I don't necessarily recommend, just because they're going to get overlooked, they're going to get overbooked, and then they're not going to be useful anymore. Prioritizing, one could argue that you work on the thing that screams the loudest first. squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? But depending on what position you have in your company, I think one thing would be to consider what if you're working on something that you should be working on, or that somebody else in your company really should be working on. Are you working on something that's getting your company towards your vision, or are you working on something that is a very task-oriented thing that really you're probably paying somebody else that should be doing it? So that's definitely something that you have to look at from a tax or from a task standpoint. Okay, does that help a little bit? Okay.
If they send me a follow-up question, I'll let you know.
Okay. As far as the calendar, two more points to bring up as far as the calendar goes. One would be to color code your things on your calendar. We're all pulled in a lot of different directions. And so for me, whether this is paper or digital, I color code the things on my calendar so that when I look at my entire week, I can see right off the top based on color. Is it a Zoom meeting? Is it an in-person meeting? Is it something for one of my kids? Is it something for me that I'm just holding time for? For example, my daughter is like super busy in extracurriculars and she keeps me on my toes. So everything on my calendar that's pink has to do with her. And so I can look at my whole week and kind of plan accordingly. If it's a Zoom meeting, it's green. So I can glance at my week and say, Zoom means I only need to be dressed from the waist up. For example, currently I'm wearing slippers. But if it's an in-person meeting, I know that I have to factor that in, right? And that's a different color completely. So the color coding helps from that standpoint, and it's more fun to look at a calendar that has color. Do you recommend a specific digital calendar? I personally use my Google Calendar because my email runs through Google Suite, G Suite. So I personally use a Google Calendar. I know a lot of people who use the Outlook calendars as well. I am an Apple person. All my stuff is Apple. So I find that Google works better with that than Outlook does. Okay, the other thing that I do in terms of calendar is, I did this more when I was working actually at the shop. When I worked at the shop and I had an office with a door, I had what was called a closed door open calendar policy. What that meant was there were certain times where I would shut my door because I would need to focus on something. But my calendar is visible to anybody and everybody who needs to see it digitally, right? I even let them see the details of what the calendar is, like what kind of appointment or what kind of thing is scheduled. And if my door is closed and somebody needs something from me, they put it on my calendar, 15, 20, 30 minutes, however much they need. They mark off time on my calendar. And what that does is then when they do come to me during that time, I can give them my 100% focus. It's our time. I can focus on them. I'm not doing anything else. I'm not frustrated because I feel like I'm being interrupted because I knew it was coming. And they get the attention that they need and that they deserve. When my door is closed, the only reason that you're knocking on it is if the building is on fire and I have to get out. So we're gonna respect the closed door, right? What that does is a couple really cool things. One is when my door is closed, it means I can focus, which is awesome. The second is that my employees are encouraged to batch things and ask me multiple questions at once instead of one question every 15 minutes. The other thing that it does is if I'm not readily available at that exact moment, sometimes they'll find their own solution and then they won't even need me in the first place, which is super amazing. So if I'm not quite as easily accessible, then they will only ask me the things that they really, truly don't know the answer to. So there's like all kinds of benefits to the closed door open calendar little policy there. Okay, the next thing that we're going to talk about is notifications. Turn off any audible notifications you have. Anything that vibrates, anything that dings, anything that makes a noise, your watch, your phone, your laptop, your tablet, anything that makes a noise. Because what happens is if your phone dings every time you get an email, how many emails do you get in a day? I don't know about you, but I get a lot. And if my phone dings every time one comes in, even if it's just for a second, I have stopped what I'm doing. Even if I don't go check my email, it's broken my concentration. So we're going to turn off audible notifications. The only one, there's an exception to this, The only one that we're going to keep on is the notification, the audible notification from our calendar. And that's because the calendar should be the function that we're using to keep us on track throughout the day. So you're going to have your door closed and nobody's going to be knocking on it. And you're going to have your notifications turned off, which means you're going to get super dialed into whatever it is that you're working on. You could lose track of time. So if you leave your notifications on for your calendar, that will at least bring you back out of your zone and get ready to transition to the next thing. I personally use a 10-minute reminder. 10 minutes is enough time for me to wrap up whatever it is that I'm working on, go to the bathroom, refill my coffee, and get ready for the next thing that I'm fixing to do. Work focus on Apple, Sarah put in there, is a super helpful one. Yes, there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of like, basically you're turning off that stimulation so that your brain has a time to has a chance to just focus in on stuff. We're in a world where everybody is accustomed to constant contact all the time. Like people are used to being able to get a hold of us. We're used to being able to get a hold of people all the time instantly. And so to be able to kind of, you almost have to recondition your people to not have that constant contact all the time.
Somebody asked in the chat.
Okay, what if you don't have an office at the door? That's a great question. Okay, what we used to do in our, we had a call, we call it the war room, but we had like 3 CSRs and dispatcher in one room. And so we got these little, they're like little light bulbs, they're battery operated, and they had a pull string on them. And it was on each person's desk. And when somebody was in their closed door time, they turned their light on. And so if their light was on, it meant don't come talk to them right now, do your best to not distract them. And then when their light was off, they were out of their focus time. So that was the best we could do without not having a physical door to close, was putting up some sort of visual representation that, hey, I'm trying to focus, leave me alone. Yes, there you go. Okay. How do you share your calendar with coworkers? Meaning like the steps that you take, or it depends. Okay, so the how to specifically share your calendar with coworkers is going to depend on which calendar software you're using. I share mine so that they can see they can see what it says. They can like see what's booked. They can't change it, but they can put themselves on the calendar, and then I have to like accept it, say yes or no. I don't necessarily put just so that they can see just busy time, because I do think it's important for my coworkers to see what it is that I'm doing. If for some reason there's something on my calendar that I don't necessarily want people to know specifically what I'm doing, I'll put something on there and I'll call it something that I know what it means, but nobody else necessarily would. Maybe there's a doctor's appointment that you don't want people knowing that you're going to. So I don't know, put something in there that you know what it is, but they don't necessarily know what it is. Yeah, there you go. Traffic lights. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Red, do not disturb, yellow, open for emergencies, and green, all clear. Yeah. Another way to do that too is if somebody's, if somebody texts you, if you have a technician out in the field or whatever, and they're texting you and you're trying to be in your closed door time, we've talked about having them prioritize what they think the level of urgency of the message is. If it's like a super extreme emergency, it starts with a certain word, like, emergency, urgent, something like that. And then otherwise it could just be when you have a second type, but we try to discourage texting when we can, just because we like to use like inter-office communication. Okay.
If you do have your door closed, Kristen, do you have like somebody else they can go to? Is there like a backup?
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be somebody else in the company that they can go to. And here's the deal: my door was never really closed for longer than an hour or two at a time. It's not like I'm shutting my door for like a ridiculously long period of time. There is very few things that happen in business that cannot hang tight for an hour. So we feel like everything is super urgent, crazy, emergency, priority. But when you really look at it, it probably can wait. Handfuls of things can't, but not very much. Okay. Okay, so the point about silencing everything is not that we're ignoring it. We're definitely acknowledging the fact that there's emails coming in, but we're going to be deliberate with how we're managing the time that we're putting to that. So let's talk about email for a minute, because I think, well, actually, I'm gonna say one more thing about calendars. It's really important for on your calendar to take like a couple minutes, maybe 5-10 minutes at the very, very beginning of your day to just review what you've got scheduled for the day, get yourself in the right mindset, just prepare yourself for the day. If you leave the house and you know that you're going to have to be in 3 different places before you get home again, then make sure you have everything that you need for the entire day based on your calendar first. And then what's important also, and that what we oftentimes don't do, is to review your day at the end of the day and make sure you got everything done. Make sure all of the things that you put on your calendar you got done. And if you didn't get some done, you're going to give yourself some grace, and then you're going to move it to another time slot later in the week. But we don't want to just completely glaze over something that we didn't do on the calendar and not get it rescheduled. So you're going to want to review at the end of the day also. Social media can be a time bandit. 2 things I will say about social media. One is a lot of us have to be on social media for our business. We have to make posts, we have to reply to reviews, we have to reply to comments, like we have to do the things in terms of our business. So what I would encourage you to do is schedule social media time on your calendar. Only be on your social media for your business when it's scheduled, and try to stay out of the rabbit holes as much as possible during that time. On the flip side of that, a lot of us like to be on social media because we need a brain break, and that's perfectly fine too. What I suggest you do is set a 15-minute timer, get as much social media brain dump as you possibly can get done in that 15 minutes. And when the 15 minutes is over, close it down and move on to the next thing. It's amazing how quickly you can lose 30 minutes just scrolling through the news feed on Facebook. So set yourself a timer. Okay, we talked about that. Okay, so email is going to be the next thing. Email is probably one of the bigger time sucks that we probably have, generally speaking, but it's super important. It's crucial for our business. We cannot ignore email. We have to deal with it. So some tactics that I've come up with over the last couple of years to do that are going to be, one is inbox is not our storage. So I challenge myself to get to inbox 0 as often as possible. I will totally admit I'm not there, and I haven't been there. I hover at about 50 in my inbox. However, I will say that one time I was doing this talk with a group of people, and I had a guy who had 13,000 emails in his box. And then this other lady was like, I have 400,000 emails in my inbox. And I was like, oh my gosh, I like broke out into a cold sweat. I couldn't even handle it. So there's read emails and there's unread emails, none of which we want to hold in our, oh my gosh, Megan, you have 3. I'm so jealous. Okay. The part with email is we don't want to use our inbox as a storage tank for everything. You want to think about your inbox and your email the same as back in the day we had an actual inbox on our desk. We cannot let the stack get all the way up to the ceiling. We got to keep it under control, because what happens to things on the bottom of the stack? They don't get touched because they're on the bottom of the stack. Same thing happened in your email, it gets lost. So a couple ways to deal with that. One, we've already turned off our notifications. So but we have to deal with the emails that are coming in. So what I personally do is say, okay, I'm going to do email from, let's say my work day is from 8 to 4. I'm going to do email from 8 to 8:30, and I'm going to deal with as much as I can during that time. And then I'm going to close my email, and I'm not going to revisit it until right before I go to lunch. And I'm going to do 30 minutes then. I'm going to revisit again in like mid-afternoon, and then I'm going to visit again right before I leave. And I'm going to try real hard not to visit in between those times. And so the trick is, well, I get too many emails to only look at it that infrequently. So how do I deal with that? Okay. So how we deal with that is During your email time, you're going to go down through the emails that have come in. If you can deal with the email in 2 minutes or less, do whatever it is. Deal with it, answer the question, send the form, do whatever it is that you need to do if it's 2 minutes or less. And when you're done, get it out of your inbox. Whether you delete it or whether you put it in a folder, I don't care, get it out of your inbox. If you get an email that is going to take longer than 2 minutes to do, you're going to now flip over to your calendar and you're going to schedule time to do it. At the same time, after you've scheduled a time to do it, so let's say, for example, it's tax time and my CPA has sent me a list of 17,000 questions that she needs me to answer about my tax returns. And I know that I can't answer them in 2 minutes. It's going to take me some time. So I go over to my calendar and I mark off 30 minutes for tomorrow at 1 to work on it. Then I respond immediately not immediately, but I respond right then and there to the CPA and I say, hey, got your email. I am going to work on this tomorrow at noon. I will have a response for you by 1 o'clock tomorrow. What that does is it tells the sender that you've received the email and that now they have a reasonable expectation of when to expect back what they need from you. So if you just don't answer, then they're like, feel ghosted or whatever. It also, now you have a level of accountability because you've told that person that you're going to have it to them by a certain time or a certain date. And so now, because you have integrity, you're going to do what you say you're going to do and you're going to get it to them and you're going to make sure you work on it. So once we have then responded to that email and said, yep, it's coming, I'll have it to you by this date and this time, we get it out of our inbox and either file it or delete it, depending on what you need to do. In that example with the CPA who had 100 questions for you for your taxes, you could do a couple different things in your calendar invite. You could copy and paste the questions they had into your description of your calendar invite so you don't have to dig for that email later. Or you could put the subject of the email into your calendar so you can do a quick search later. Point is you have to be able to get back to that email, so you don't necessarily want to delete it, but you don't want it hanging out in your inbox, clogging it up either. You want to get it out of there. Okay, let me stop for just a second and look at these notes. 200 items in the to-do list. That list gets added to you really fast and easily. Okay. And then the last thing on email would be unsubscribe. Unsubscribe to junk mail. Ugh. It seems like, I don't know about you guys, but it seems like anytime you go buy something these days, they want your email address. First of all, y'all can say no. You do not have to give them your email address. You can get a receipt without giving them your email address. Secondly, I have a separate email address that I use for that kind of stuff if I do want them. So yes, exactly. So yes, my Apple email address, like for Tractor Supply, which is my Target, it's my version of Target. I want my coupons from there, but I don't want them clogging up my email box that I use on a regular basis. So I'll give them that secondary email address and let them send that stuff there. But inevitably, our work email still gets used and we still end up getting junk. So I like to, if I go out of town for a couple of days and I'm not in my email, I do a vacation responder. Hopefully you do a vacation responder too if you're going to be out. But what I do when I come back and I look at all those emails is that's a great time to sit down and start unsubscribing, because if you've been not checking your email for a couple of days, pretty much everybody who has you on a list is going to have emailed you at least once. So you can go down through and unsubscribe from a whole bunch of things all in one foul swoop, which is awesome. There's also an app called Unroll Me that can help you unsubscribe from things like in bulk. I will say I have used that app before. I like it in short spurts, but I found that if I kept it installed, it would like not really even delete, but it like certain messages that were important would disappear or become unsearchable. So I only use it periodically to unenroll from a whole bunch of stuff, and then I take it back off the computer. Tips for when your coworkers think their items needing your directive or issue resolved in a higher priority than other items in the to-do list. So your coworkers think that their stuff is more important than yours. Okay. Okay. So we're going to talk about, this is actually part
And
of
I
the.
can
Go
give
ahead.
a little context to that as well. I pretty much play the role of like 12 hats on behalf of like the owner's right-hand woman. So like, you know, the general manager, but not with that title. But literally my job description is the marketing and IT manager, but yet I write policy for the on-call technician policy, even though we have a service manager. Like, so all these things get added to my to-do list.
Yes.
Because I have the trade knowledge, but how do I prioritize what their tasks that they're needing help on versus what other tasks are that may have a higher priority?
Okay, so I think as women in general, we have a really bad habit of saying yes too much. All the way across the board. This is not just work related, but just all the way across the board, because we want to help, we want to serve, we want to please, and we say yes too much. And it's really hard to say no. So 2 things I'm going to say about saying no. One is when you're saying no to something, you're saying no to the task, not the person who's asking you to do the task. So separate that in your brain, because a lot of times we don't want to say no because we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. So you're saying no to the task, not the person. The second thing is that you can respond without saying no. You can say yes, and yes, I can help you with XYZ project, but that means this project over here is going to get delayed. Are you okay with that? If your boss comes to you and says, hey, I need you to write this policy or make this form or do this thing, and I need it done by Friday, and you know that in order to do that, something else is going to have to come off your plate, you can say, yes, I can 100% make that happen, but this other project that you wanted me to work on is going to get delayed. Are you okay with that? And it puts the decision of prioritizing in their plate, not yours. And so now it's their decision whether or not it is important enough for you to stop what you're doing and create that thing instead of working on the other project they already started. They had you started on. Tammy, go away is not off the table. You guys are hilarious. Okay. Okay, so for those of you who are on the same boat of everybody comes to you and asks you to do things, I think it comes down to you just have to be honest. Like there's really only a certain number of hours in the day. We already know that there's only a certain number of hours in the work day. And so you just have to be honest with the people who are asking you to do things and let them know that, you know, I can do that, but I can't do this, or just I can do it, but I can't start on it for XYZ days, right? Like, yes, I can 100% help you with that, but I have to finish up these other projects first. I can start on it on May 1st. Sometimes they'd be like, I don't want to wait that long. I'll just do it myself. And sometimes they'd be like, okay, cool, I'll wait, right? So, but we have to be able to respectfully set boundaries from that standpoint also. Know when to say no, when to say yes. We have to remember that no, right? This moment doesn't mean no forever. Yes, no in this exact moment does not necessarily mean no forever. It could, but it doesn't necessarily mean no forever. Okay, let me make sure that there is. Okay. In terms of time management principles, any time management principles that you learn, definitely make sure that you teach them to people that you work with, people that work for you. Teach them to your children. They do not teach time management principles in school, so teach this stuff to your children. The older they get, the busier they get, the more sports and extracurricular activities and social life and work and all the things. Teach them time management skills. Teach them how to use a calendar. Both of our kids have their own calendar on Gmail. They can see ours, we can see theirs. If there is something that I want to do as a family and I expect them to be there, I put it on their calendar, and then they can look there before they say, hey, can I go to so-and-so's house on that day? No, actually, we're all busy. Look on your calendar. So teach this stuff to your kids. If you have employees, if you're a supervisor or a business owner and you have employees, you can have them do the time diary. You kind of have to handle that with kid gloves when you hand it out, because if you walk up to somebody and say, I need you to write down everything you did this week, they're going to be like, and they're probably not going to be totally truthful with you. So, so you're going to want to explain to them why it is important. We're just gathering data. Nobody is in trouble. We just want to make sure that that we're being as a company as efficient and productive as possible. So we also do it because sometimes we don't realize multiple people are working on the same thing, or nobody's working on something that needs to be worked on. So there's a lot of different reasons that we would want employees to do a time diary, but you just have to be really transparent onto why it is that you're wanting them to fill it out, so that they don't get all like defensive about it. Okay. Let me make sure I have.
While you're taking your notes, I want to see, what is your guys' biggest takeaway? What are you going to do and start implementing today? What are our goals after today's session? What are some action items?
I sent a message to my team that we need to implement a stoplight system on our Google Workspace status.
That's
I think the
good one.
biggest thing with that is getting everybody to abide by it, because it does take some time. It takes some habit kind of retraining on that, to understand when it's red that it doesn't mean that it's never going to get dealt with. It just might not get dealt with at this exact moment. So we have to be patient. Sorry, Miranda's taking down her Post-it notes on her computer.
I'm wondering, I have a question.
Please.
I'm wondering, because we obviously manage our time both in ServiceTitan and in like our company uses Outlook and the Outlook calendar. I'm wondering if you overlap your calendars. Do you schedule everything in both places so that people can see, like if you have a scheduled block on both calendars? Because I currently schedule everything for sure in my Outlook calendar because it can send me a little like boop, boop notification, and I am trying to determine if I need to put it on our other calendar, because each of us office folks has a tech account that we, like our owners, can add things to it, and then we'll know like a training is coming up or something like that.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
So are you using it like a dispatch, like you're basically like a dispatch board? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It is the dispatch board that we're using, in fact.
I don't think I would duplicate everything over to the dispatch board. I think I would just take everything that gets put on the dispatch board and make sure it's on your Outlook calendar. And then if somebody needs to know your calendar, just invite them to share or to look at your Outlook calendar is probably how I would do it. It's just going to create more work for yourself to make sure that everything is always congruent if you're trying to put everything onto your dispatch board. Yeah.
In addition to, like, the dispatch team might be upset because you're taking up space on their board. I mean, you could always set up teams, but I know that a lot of the dispatchers always complain, like, my board is so full, there's too many teams. So adding office people to that might be a little bit frustrating for them.
Our environment's a little bit different, but yeah, I get where you're coming from.
So let me ask you this. Does anybody use a digital task management that they absolutely love? Trello, Evernote.
I've been
We use
using
Planner
Motion.
and Teams.
Okay, Teams, Google
I've been
Tasks.
using
like a-
Motion.
I didn't catch that last thing.
Motion.
Motion.
Use motion.com. On the requirements you put in.
Very cool.
You know where else we can schedule tasks? In ServiceTitan. How many of us use tasks in ServiceTitan? On a show of hands.
Yeah.
Either we're using those tasks too much or we're not using them enough or
Yeah.
at all. So we need to find a happy medium, because you can schedule tasks for your team there too.
So from a task management standpoint, before I used a digital task management thing, I would schedule like 5 and 15-minute literal calendar appointments on my calendar. And then that was getting super overwhelming because I would look at my calendar and be like, oh my God, there's 4,000 things on here. What the heck? And so then I transitioned over. Honestly, I use notes on my on my Apple the most, just because you can make little bubbles so that you can check stuff off, and it goes back and forth from my phone to my laptop pretty easily. But then what I do is I block off like 90 minutes here or an hour here or whatever to work on my task list. The trick with that is then, like was brought up earlier, now I'm looking at a task list. What's the first thing we want to do on our task list? Almost always the easiest thing. Is it the thing that we should be doing? Probably not. So just because it's on a task list doesn't necessarily mean that's the specific order that you need to work on stuff too. Zapier, yeah. What else? I think that's about all that I have in terms of task management. So you guys are, in terms of time management, you guys are going to get the time diary, which is a fillable form that you can use for yourself and for your any of your team members who would like to use it. It's pretty self-explanatory, in my opinion. All you're going to do is write down everything that you do on each line and how many minutes you did it for. And then at the bottom, it'll let you kind of group things together. So if you group email time together, you just add up all the time you spent on email that day and put a number, and it kind of helps you accumulate all of, okay,
It automatically schedules your tasks.
this similar tasks together so that you can look at total time from that standpoint. You're also going to get a 1-page infographic that is just like a highlight of the all of the little individual tips and hacks that we talked about today, just kind of as a reminder. I know for me, I'm actually super glad to be able to do this with you guys today, because it's been a little while since I've looked at this talk, and there was a few things on there that I was like, oh, I totally dropped the ball on this and I haven't been doing this. I need to fix it. So it's a good reminder.
Awesome. Well, everybody, let's give it up for Kristen and all of her great ideas. I hope that all of us can figure out our time bandits, including myself. Social media is a killer for me as well, because you go in there and you just kind of go down that rabbit hole. Jess, if you don't mind sharing the feedback form in the Slack, or it's not Slack, in the chat. We are all about feedback here at LadyTitans and ServiceTitan. If you guys have anything you'd like to share, please let us know. But I do have a couple shout outs here, or call outs. I'm going to share this link in the chat as well. We are looking, I don't know if any of you guys have heard of something called Pantheon. I don't know, it's kind of a big deal, right? Pantheon is going to be this year in Florida for all of our friends on the other side. We're leaving California, going across the way to Florida, but we are looking for Pantheon speakers. If you have any ServiceTitan success stories that you want to consider, or you consider yourself a subject matter expert, we want to talk to you guys. We're looking for speakers for Pantheon. So I'm going to drop this in the chat. Somebody from the team reached out and said they would love to hear from some LadyTitans and have a great LadyTitan presence this year at Pantheon. So if you have not filled it out already, please do so. Sheena's already filled that out. Awesome. If you guys have questions, please let us know. Next month, I'm trying to pull up the speaker for next month. We're going to do, Ashley Tanner is going to talk about loving yourself and self-care, and just really trying to prioritize yourself, which now that we know how much time we're going to have on our hands working with Kristen, we're going to need to fill in some time for some self-care. So we appreciate all of you guys so much. If you have any questions, please let us know, but we'll be around. Jess, did I forget anything?
I don't think so.
Okay. Awesome. Keep an eye out in the LadyTitan Facebook group, because we have Pantheon tickets to give away. We're going to have probably some games, some prizes coming up to lead to Pantheon. So keep an eye in the Facebook group, and you will get, I'm going to share the documents that Kristen created for us in the Facebook chat, but also they are going to go out in the recap. But other than that, we appreciate you guys so much. Hope you guys have an amazing Taco Tuesday, all the margaritas, all the tacos, and we'll see you guys around.
See you, ladies.
Bye.
Does anyone mind staying on camera for a second so I can take a picture of all of us working hard?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. And come
This
on
is when all
camera.
the cameras turn on.
I know. Like, and everyone. Okay. Yeah. We've been trying to expand on showing how we develop and participate in our communities. Okay. Smile. Awesome. Thanks, ladies.
Awesome.
Thank
you guys so
you.
much. Jess and I
Thanks,
will hang out if
bye.
you guys have any questions. If not, we'll see you guys next month.
See you guys
All
next
right.
month. Thank you guys for
Bye.
everything.
Thank
I
you
appreciate
guys.
Yeah.
Bye.
All right, Jess, you good if we call it? Okay. We're out. See you guys later. Bye.
So you enter projects and it tells you when to work on them.